You gonna look shady in the background? Okay. Ooh, this is great. I'm Kaya Allo, and welcome to Ink and Spine, a space between words and sound, where each week we sit with a book, a film, or an album to connect, savoring each at the sweet pace of honey. Thank you for joining me. Let's begin. Today we enjoy Mississippi Masala. It's a film directed by Mira Nair and released in 1991. It stars Sarita Chaudhry and Denzel Washington, and it is such a beautiful meshing, a true mixed masala, a mix of spices, of environment, of geography, of time. We begin the film in 1972 in Kampala, Uganda. Now, to give a little backstory of the significance of that time, it was during the regime of Idi Amin. This film, based on real life events and a real life love story, follows that South Asian Ugandan family and transports us all the way to Greenwood, Mississippi in 1990. This distance of time, of space, of geography, and of culture is where we find all of the sweetness that we're going to explore today with this film. I hope you've grabbed something tasty to drink, that you're cozy, and that you spend a little time enjoying this review of the film. I do want to warn you up front that there will be spoilers, so if you need to take a pause and come back after you've watched the film and savored it yourself, I invite you to do so. This won't expire, I'll be here waiting. But for those that are ready to continue, let's. Mississippi Masala is over 30 years old, but it is so evergreen in the topics that it explores and its relevance. The film opens in Kampala and it is November 1972. We get to witness the darkness of this time, not because of the scenes, but literally, it is so dark. There's two friends in a car, Okello and Jay, both Ugandan, or at least identifying as such. In this initial scene, we don't have the entire context until the very end of the film. And of course, that's intentional. We get to create our own interpretation of events until the very end. That's a beautiful part of the film that Mira explored. The assumptions that fill in the spaces and the gaps in between. Are they helpful? Are they damaging? Where are they founded? As we progress from the darkness of this initial scene, we're transported to about daybreak. The sun is just about to rise. We hear the jingle of Mina, the little girl who runs toward her father to ask what is happening. But there isn't the sweetness or the possibility that we usually encounter with the beginning of a new day. In these scenes, we get to see little Mina. She's introduced to us with the little ringing of the bells on her anklet. The innocence of that was striking to me because how often does anybody walk around with a little? But I think it's important to represent the innocence that is a part of that thread of joy. Now, let me back up a little bit so I can give a little background of Mira Nair herself. This film comes off of the heels of Mira's incredible film, Salam Bombay, which had been nominated for an Academy Award in 1988. Mira had spent the spring of 1989 driving through Mississippi, Louisiana, and South Carolina with her writing partner Suni. They continued to happen upon motel after motel that was owned by South Asian families, and they started to ask why, and they were all coming from the same place, from Uganda, expelled in 1972. Now, before that drive had begun, Mira had been reading a book called From Citizen to Refugee, Ugandan Asians Come to Britain. And the author of this book was a young scholar named Mahmoud Mamdani. And yes, it is the same Mamdani as the mayor of New York. Mahmoud was one of the many South Asians that had been expelled during that time, and he had decided to write a book only a year later. I'm in awe of the ability to find language and put such an experience on paper, to have the ability to have processed in the way that Mahmoud does in the book. Now, Mira sought Mahmoud out in Nairobi during this research trip, And I don't think that she would have anticipated that a couple of years later, from 1989 to 1991, that she would end up falling in love with this young scholar. This film seems to be a love letter, an ode to what came to be the fruit that was born of this union. Rest on this for a moment. And in modern time today, over 30 years after this film, of course, Sohra Mamdani comes of that union. Of course, the inspiration that we get to feel in this time is infused with the inspiration of the time before. Being rooted and grounded in love, we can see the essence of that continue to be infused today. Amira and Suni interviewed over 2,000 South Asians that had been expelled. Families lived in motels. The Indian women ran the liquor stores in these towns, and they made their homes their way in these foreign and distant places while still able to hold on to the remnants of their culture even before Uganda. Jay is 34 years old in 1990, where most of the film spends its time. I came upon something Mira said that was really beautiful, and she said, "I did not want to be imitative." Try to say that fast. I did not want to be just one of the pack. And instead of continuing to tell generic stories, she insisted on Denzel Washington. And that was also the draw for Denzel. When would we see love told in this way between a South Asian woman and an African American man? When I think about artistry and making choices as an artist that have such an echo over a generation, this is such a beautiful example from Denzel. In the first 2 minutes, we get to experience and witness the breakdown of Jay and Okello's friendship. Later in the film, there are clips that show Jay and Okello as young boys by the stream and rolling hills of Uganda, wearing the same clothes, doing the same things, unaware of these invisible lines of difference. On one hand, Jay is an Indian Ugandan, and on the other, we have Okello, who is a Black Ugandan. Oftentimes, it strikes me that Jay chooses to wear the traditional dress of Uganda, while Okello, though he is the Black Ugandan, he is wearing Western clothes. There's a lot that can be dissected and said here, but that is what the point of this reflection is. You get to decide. As we move on between the style of dress between these two men, the first question appears. Who is more Ugandan? Who decides? The rapture is so deep and severe between these two friends. We hear Okello look directly into the eyes of Jay and say, "You're not leaving because you're scared to leave. You are scared of leaving Uganda." They're arguing about what is more cowardice. Is it to remain silent to the injustice and the oppression that they are witnessing with this regime change? Or is it what Jay has done, where Jay has spoken out on the BBC about the oppression that is happening back home? This becomes the reason that Jay and his family must leave the country for their safety. He has poked the hornet's nest that is Idi Amin and his regime. I pause on the delicacy of their friendship that seemed to have been so solidified before. Their friendship has survived so much, everything else over the course of a 34-year lifetime, but it somehow could not survive this regime change. For Jay, India was no longer home under British colonial rule, but now, under Idi Amin, Uganda can no longer be home for him either. So where does a man go from now to somewhere? Exploring this film has been such beautiful cultural exposure. An example of that is the choice of this sweet, sweet term of endearment. Mina has grown up with Okello. Okello is Okello Chacha. And in research, I learned that Chacha is Hindi for uncle. Okello is Mina's father's brother by love. So for her, her uncle is by love. She only knows Okello in the context of love. It seems that the men become split in that first car ride that we witness. They're split by this invisible line of ethnicity. It's a line that is invisible, yes, but It is so powerful in the ways that it creates this eternal divide between these two brothers. At a checkpoint on the road to the airport, after saying the most abrupt goodbye, an officer makes his way onto the bus and he selects Kinu as the focus of his repressed rage. There's not a lot of dialogue. There is no soundtrack at this point in time, but so much is said with the zooming in on the faces, the red and the intensity of the officer's eyes, the tinges of sweat from having been outside, and the fear. You can almost see Kinu's heart jump out of her chest as the officer sets the barrel of his rifle along her heart. Kinu's the only one asked to exit the bus, and as they are throwing her things outside into the red soil of Uganda, Kinu is forced to play the music that she has on her tape deck. The Hindi translation reads, "My shoes are Japanese. My pants are English. My red hat is Russian. But my heart, it is all Indian." Unlike Jay, we're not really sure whether Kinu has had exposure to India, but for Jay, he has spent his 34 years born and raised in Uganda. There's this scene with this woman and her prayer beads. We only see her from behind as she looks out onto the Ugandan horizon one last time, her prayer beads dangling in view. And I'm curious if she's saying prayers of return or if she's saying prayers of goodbye. There's such sweet serendipity in this film. Even Sarita's involvement is divine. Sarita herself talks about her origin and how she too had to leave her home of Jamaica and moved to London, leaving so many and so much behind. This was Sarita's debut as an actor, and that over 35 years later, we have had the privilege of witnessing Sarita's evolution, in my opinion, her refinement. When Sarita came about the conception of this film and was asked to audition, that for her, she just thought, if I could only be a PA on this film, to be a PA working under Marinaire, that would be enough. And little did she know that the divine and the cosmos had much bigger plans for her. It is now August 1990 in Greenwood, Mississippi, y'all. It has been 18 years since that scene at the airport in Uganda as Jay and Kinu and Mina were saying goodbye. They have traveled since from Uganda to London and then now London to Mississippi, and who knows where else in between. At this point where Mina is shopping for milk for a wedding, the top of the shopping cart was so full with these gallon jugs of milk. But then on the bottom shelf, you know that shelf where you'll put like paper towel or those long bulky things? That part of the shopping cart is littered with, I think I counted 7 cartons of milk. That was it. The top heavy nature of that shopping cart reminds me of the rush in settling in a new place where there hasn't been that choice of future planning or dreaming. Like when you are in that state of survival, it does seem to lay the groundwork for a lot of the choices that the characters throughout the film make as we encounter them at different stages of this instinct of survival and the removal of intention that happens when urgency takes shape. I love that Denzel's character is named Demetrius. Come on, give me a good name like Demetrius. Mina and Demetrius encounter each other because Mina has borrowed the car of a character named Anil. She's crashed the car while having an argument, and somehow I don't see any milk spilling in the scene, so good on her for that. But because Mina collides into Demetrius's truck, she needs to exchange contact information with him, and that is how they meet. After this accident, somehow Jay, who is really hell-bent on reclaiming his stolen and wrongfully taken property from Uganda, he somehow is able to look at the accident with a lens that he needs, but he can't apply to himself. Like he turns to Anil and says, "Oh, well, there's no sense crying over spilled milk," with a chuckle. But where's his chuckle with his lawsuits? Where's his chuckle with his things back in Uganda? Mina ends up going to Leopards, but this time it's with the most eligible bachelor of their community named Harry. Harry Patel is coming from out of town, and there's an exchange between Mina, Kinu, her mother, and Jay, where Kinu is concerned about the darkness of Mina's skin. She jokes about Mina being a darkie, not as a term that is derogatory from her, but of her from what the community speaks about them. At this point in time, I don't even know if it's apt to call this community because all they seem to do with this family is just gossip and degrade and talk down upon them as the mothers giggle about Mina's dark skin as opposed to their own daughters. It makes me think about the communities of our supposed belonging. It makes sense on paper that we would be able to find community with those that look like us. But in the story, that's not the case. We can maybe glamorize that sense of belonging. This cluster actually is a source of greater isolation and alienation. For Mina, at 24, she's already come to terms with the differences that her community seems to ridicule her for. There's a poster in her room that I love that says, "My karma ran over my dogma." And I'm wondering if that was foreshadowing for the kind of driver she would be. Back to Leopards, back to the club. Harry, who is supposed to be going for the more fair-skinned, more rule book following good girls in the community, actually approaches Mina at this wedding of Anil and Chanda, and Harry asks Mina to skip the wedding to go to the club. And from his research at the time, it's the only place that's open at that time of night, and it is only Black people in this club. It's the advent of so much in music when you think about hip hop in 1990. Like, what a time. We notice a stark contrast, almost as if Mira, the director, is giving us this clear definition of what belonging looks like and what it doesn't. We've only known Mina and her family to be ridiculed by their community, their prescribed place of belonging thus far. But then here in this club, in this place where Mina and Harry are supposed to be aliens, a friend approaches Mina with such joy and such glee. This is Mina's friend, Tadis. And Tadis is so excited to introduce Mina to her friends, to bring her in, to draw her in. And this is a new experience for us as the viewer in the film, where we have not encountered such embrace. So far, all we've known is alienation and isolation, but Tadis brings Mina in this beautiful warm embrace. That is community, but it's in this alien formation. While in the club, Mina happens upon Demetrius. They've just met earlier in the day because of the car accident. It's a beautiful, complex scene that I think you should watch if you haven't yet, but I won't bore you with explaining it all. It reminds me of something in the film that Jay says when the men at the wedding, after the separation of gender has occurred and the boys are doing their thing, they're making fun of Jay and saying, "Look at you. This guy used to be the defender of the Blacks. And now the Blacks are the ones to have expelled him." And they're referring to the fact that Jay was a lawyer back home for him in Uganda. This kind of homogenizing of all Blacks and all South Asians or whatever ethnicity. We know that in reality that's not true. I admire Jay's wisdom in response to this drunken ignorance. And he just says, "Cruelty has no color." Mic drop, Jay. There are these moments where Jay seems to have such wisdom, but then in times when it comes to his yearning to go back to restore what was taken from him, it creates these blinders and blind spots where his wisdom and logic can't seem to penetrate to guide him. There's a lot that happens on this wedding day between Anil and Chanda, but so much of the film doesn't really focus on their wedding. It is just kind of a helpful backdrop. But later on, after Demetrius and Mina connect at Leopards in the club on the dance floor, we see Mina sit by the pool. And this is the most beautiful that we seem to ever see the pool throughout the film. It almost seems as the pool is ailing downward throughout the film. The reflection is so pure. It's nighttime. Mina's sitting there by herself, slumped in this relaxed pose, and her mother Kinu approaches her, so excited because her mother is thinking, oh my gosh, if I can marry you off to this good boy with good pedigree, you are going to finally be safe. You are going to circumvent all of the pain and survival that we have had to suffer. She approaches her daughter, and there's no apology or further discussion about the conversation earlier in reference to Mina's darker skin. It's almost a quiet grief that Kinu pours into her daughter's scalp as she stands behind her at this pool. The reflection of the water is different on Mina's face as it is on Kinu's face. Kinu oil her daughter's scalp. She holds the grief and the disappointment of the prejudice that she carries in one hand, and then in the other, she holds and oils the crown of her daughter's head. The difference of welcome when Mina arrives at Demetrius's family home is so stark to that of her community. These folks in Demetrius's household, they are just as ignorant as any other community about another, but their questions have this air of curiosity as opposed to prejudice or judgment or threat. And even though some of their questions are quite offensive, there is a way that Mina shows us the ability that so many of us are able to discern that in the moment, like a trained muscle, where you can tell the difference between an ignorance that is grounded in genuine curiosity and an ignorance that has thorns of ulterior motives. And we also are able to understand in this scene where so much is packed in with a tastefulness where it doesn't feel rushed or overwhelming to receive all of this information in this one scene. We are able to meet Aunt Rose. Aunt Rose is an anchoring maternal figure. They share a meal, they share curiosity, and there is this beautiful exchange as Dex's immaturity meets his curiosity to create an opening that I think we tend to dismiss in those we deem as young or not having lived a lot of life, saying to Mina, "You're just like us. We from Africa, but we never been there before either. We travel from Sunday family dinner, and Demetrius takes us along in his budget carpet cleaning van to the bayou. What would Greenwood, Mississippi be if we did not visit the bayou?" I found the scene along the bayou so sweet, and they've opened this safe passage that flows in mutual direction from Sunday dinner. That curiosity is invited. Demetrius asks Mina about a ring that she's wearing, and she teaches him about this cooling stone from India. And though she's never been to this place of her origin, she can still be proud to embody the culture and the traditions of her origin. Then this sweet moment as Mina is teaching Demetrius about this cooling stone, intended purpose to bring peace of mind. There is a pause, and he looks at her and he says, "You're sweet. You know that?" Oh my gosh, come on. I'd rather that than WID. Hi, sit. As we continue with the film, Demetrius is sprung, honey. He is sprung for his girl Mina. There's such gentleness to the way that Mina and Demetrius's love evolves. Are you savoring with me? Is it still sweet? The way gossip can travel so much quicker than the sweetness of honey or good news. Demetrius's ex-girlfriend Alicia, who suddenly now is performing piety, and then all of the aunties of Mira, Kinu, and Jay's community gossiping about them, but we don't see any of them check in on either Kinu, on Mina, on Jay, or Demetrius. Portrays this human nature as opposed to making it an ethnic nature or pinning it to one group as opposed to the other to create these false dichotomies. Earlier in the film, Napkins, he shares this speech of unity and sticking together as brown and black people, how we're essentially all the same, but how quickly that turns in the same way as how quickly the friendship of Okello and Jay at the beginning of the film evolves or devolves. Suddenly, that unity that Napkin spoke of to Tyrone is gone. As Tyrone extends his hand in this courthouse awaiting the release of Demetrius and Nina, he's not even invited to sit beside them on the same side. The still frame of this shot is so powerful without words, Napkin telling him, "We'll have to talk later, not now." I found that simple line so interesting because when is it ever a good time? Returning to the community reaction because of their youth, they can't properly articulate themselves. And the elders aren't even able to allow space for these youngins to tell the full story of what has happened. We hear the most wisdom from Aunt Rose, as Willeben is afraid of the consequence of his son's actions, not for the sake of his son's well-being or safety, or his own, rather because of reputation. Aunt Rose turns to Willeben and says, "The days of slavery, they over." We give thanks for the sweetness of the Aunt Roses and the Uncle Roses in our life. The pool is decrepit, and I wonder if that is intentional to articulate that loss of hope, that final blow where we become quiet and start to exist in smaller and smaller chambers of our personhood. That instead of continuing to get back up, like Cardi B says, "I've been down 9 times, but I get up 10. But on the 11th time, do we stay down and then follow the rules and fall in line wherever those lines are?" It seems like Mina has been waiting for her father to see her as more than just an offspring of responsibility. Jay is able to receive the wisdom from Mina as she defends her Okello Chacha to say, "No, Dad, he loved you. He bailed you out. Your anger has been misplaced for all of these years, and all it has done has been to serve in rotting you year after year, keeping you away from your brother in love." But on the last night before exile, Jay and other South Asian Ugandans are sharing in a strange merriment, as is a theme in the film, is rudely interrupted by officers as they break apart the celebration and end up arresting Jay. But ultimately, the thing that separates Jay in that cell with so many others that have been arrested, money is the separating factor. Money and education. The film ends in a way that isn't tightly packaged and neat to serve our logic and rationale. We find Mina continue her rebellion, but this time it's fueled by something more powerful than she seems to have ever experienced before. This love with Demetrius fuels her to steal Anil's car a second time. I wonder if animals do that in the animal kingdom. Like, you get in a fight and you're like, okay, now you ain't part of the pack of the lions. Now we're gonna think of you as a zebra. Like, it's so strange the ways that to other in species, but nothing has changed about our humanity. There is such a difference between awareness and awareness of. And in that awareness of, there is a shift. And Mina takes that opportunity not to let this go. She is aware of the lack of opportunities that remain for her in Greenwood and the even fewer opportunities should her family move to Uganda. Oh, the payphone scene with the rain, y'all. But in this booth, she's wearing that same shawl that carries the jingle that is reminiscent of the jingle of her little anklet, that return to joy. She will create her own new belonging. She is her new beginning. The film concludes with these beautiful new beginnings and these sweet new belongings, but also with painful endings. I wonder if Mina and Demetrius's wisdom is what creates the perfect landing place and the toolkit that Jay ends up taking with him as his lawsuit is finally going to be heard by the courts in Uganda, as he travels back to what he wants so desperately to be home, a place that had been home but has now rejected him. He encounters a taxi driver who reminds him that heaven was always there through all of the bloodshed that mixed with the red soil, that as he returns home, perhaps this is still home. He makes his first stop in Uganda at the school that Okello used to teach at. He is made aware that Okello died shortly after his departure in 1972. It's time from 1972 to 1990. Jay's repressed, stagnant, cancerous anger has been festering over a man who was actually in the ground. I wonder if Jay's ability to take this news in stride, to accept the responsibility that comes with our choice when we choose one path over another, to harden as opposed to soften, to keep that knife grip so tight in our hands, unaware as our anger is blinding that it is creating a deeper and deeper wound. He goes back to his home, the home he has fought these 18 years for. The beautiful landscape that we observe earlier in the film still remains in the rolling hills, but it's muddy and there is debris and there are things everywhere. It's here as Jay takes a seat looking over that same horizon, that how we get here, yes, it belongs so much to more than us. It is so much out of our control. But what we do from here, that is ours to choose. That is ours to choose what we remain tethered to. It's ours to choose what we release and let go. Our ability to be open to new beginnings and new belongings. This film is so full of sweetness. The kind of sweetness that isn't artificial or performative, but the sweetness that we all live in our daily lives. The sweetness that is held beside loss, and still yet, there is still so much sweetness. Thank you for savoring this film with me. It's been so much fun and truly a real joy, right? It's been so joyful. Are we having fun? I would love nothing more than to hear what stood out to you, what resonated for you, what sweetness did you find for yourself based off of your unique experience. We move on to our sweet reminder segment. I heard from 2 people too. Now for me, that's a big deal, y'all. I'm gonna celebrate. But I heard from 2 people in Edmonton who weren't aware of these service offerings in their city. And because of that, they were able to get themselves subsidized transit passes. And one of them shared that she had not been to the gym in 2 years because that was one of the first expenses to go when she was having constraints on her finances. It meant so much to get a little selfie from this listener, and I share in the sweetness of that offering by giving a thank you to my earth angel, Katie, who had put me on. I didn't know about it until she put me on. So it's so special to be able to pay that forward, and not only to pay it forward, but then to hear from you that it is bringing sweetness into your world already. I hope that you'll continue to carry it forward and pay it forward to another, generating more sweet relief for those around you in your community. But that meant so much to receive. Today, I wanted to offer a sweet reminder that comes from my personal experience. I want to be mindful that the premise and one of the main tenets of this podcast is that this is not a place to trauma dump or to bitch, quite frankly, but that this is a place where, as I'm in a rebuilding phase, how can I challenge myself to be able to access sweetness in the midst of it all? Because if I can focus on the sweetness, I can generate more of that. I was finally able to get the approval to resume my studies. That means more than the world to me to be able to resume my studies. I love, love, love psychology. This feels like a ladder drop down when I got that approval this week. I couldn't believe it. I literally had to make someone else read it because I could not believe it was real after so many appeals, so many rejections, so many failed applications. So it means so much that I'm going to be able to resume my studies and to continue this part of my purpose because of persistence and grit. I'm really grateful that this door has finally opened. Ultimately, I am grateful for the ability to resume my studies because education is one of very few avenues out of poverty, and it means everything to me to have this avenue restored. I infuse it with every ounce of my gratitude and reverence. I never ever want to let this opportunity go. I share this sweetness with you because I hope that in the same ways that so many have inspired me and supported me to remain persistent, to never lose grit, that no is not the end, to keep trying, keep calling, keep emailing, keep appealing over and over. I know it's so much work. With sweetness, though, it is a discipline that already recognizes that hard work is inevitable, that challenge is inevitable. But instead, when I can replace my old fuel sources, instead using sweetness, along with discipline and persistence and grit and all of the inevitable components of hard work, how much better life can be. I'm still learning. I'm gonna be growing, and I hope that we're gonna grow together. But it is my hope that in sharing of this personal story of sweetness and the ways that it has generated this new hope. Y'all, I cannot tell you how much hope was infused into my life this week because of the opening of this door. It means beyond this world. I hope that in the ways that others have inspired me to stay on the path of light, on the path of sweetness, that this can offer you something similar. All right, how y'all doing? We continue with our segment, You're Welcome, Sweetness. Now, last week, I was able to share the practical offering of the benefits Wayfinder and the services for subsidized transit and recreation center access. This week, we continue with the practical, and I'd love your feedback. As we are gaining momentum together, I want to make this fruitful for you. So in alignment with the season, I wanted to offer something that was practical for how we dress. I am a lover of fashion, not in the context of a white t-shirt with a logo and paying $1,000 for that. No, but fashion that is well crafted, that is an extension of expression, but ultimately quality. Mwah, mwah. It's a love language. We bring it in with shoes. Now, this is not about the shoe, but this is about how to take care of your shoes. On the backside, something that I noticed with the girlies online, the girls are dressing, honey. The girls and the boys, they are dressing, and I give kudos to all of them. There's so much inspiration of how to dress, and I'm so stoked for those that share their style. But another thing that I notice when the sole starts to look a little traveled, and it does not have to be that way. About 12 years ago, I discovered a cobbler in my city, and unfortunately, he is going to be retiring this summer, but he has been my cobbler for 12 years, this beautiful, beautiful angel. And he's the one that put me onto some game of shoes, and that was to create that difference in texture. So this is the original texture from the shoe. But then he adds this kind of ASMR rubberized texture. Not only does it help with the grip of the shoe, but it's able to preserve your red bottom or whatever your bottom looks like. That pun was not intended, but you can take it. Enjoy it. Sweetness. Preserve the bottoms of your shoe so that this weathers, this rubberized addition that he will color match, that he will apply with such precision so you can't even see that anything is different when you're wearing the shoe or even from afar. It just looks like your red bottom because he's color matched the red to match the sole. Even when I think about another pair of shoes, I remember when I got this pair of boots, the heel was so thin and so flat that it actually was quite uncomfortable. He added an even thicker rubberized band. So it actually creates a little bit more height with the thicker rubber. And not only does it help with making the shoe more comfortable, I've got grip in the winter time, and also I'm able to preserve and maintain the shoe. These are 14 years old, but they don't look it. Hopefully you'll be able to find a cobbler in wherever you live, but I'll make sure to link something that is helpful in terms of waterproofing your shoes and keeping your leather shiny, because where I live in Calgary, we're getting ready for the stampede, honey. I'll give you something to get your leather ready for your cowboy boots, keep them dry and waterproofed with the rain. Always something useful, but that is today's sweet offering. How to keep your shoes in good condition, because we want you going to those weddings looking sharp. We don't want you looking crusty, dusty, musty, or traveled. In that way. As we wind down today's episode, we transition to the slow listen. I hope you've been enjoying the songs that I've been sharing with you. Today's slow listen comes from a Portuguese singer-songwriter named Maro, and the song is called Something 'Bout Tomorrow. I'm going to share a few lines from the song. She opens with the line, "There's nothing like tomorrow, the day we always choose to start again." When I think about New Year's resolutions, I feel attacked. As the song continues into the chorus, she says, "And though we know there's never really a way to live it all, we keep on holding on to this idea that tomorrow will be the day." We're craving for tomorrow when all we get to do is in today. I hope that as you are savoring the film, that you can put this song on by Maro and reflect on your todays and your tomorrows. Thank you again for enjoying Mississippi Masala with me. It was a joy for me, and how beautiful that from this film's inspiration and love comes Zoran Mamdani to continue in his own way of inspiration for a time such as now. All links to the film, practical offerings, and sweet reminders will be included in the show notes in the description box. I hope you will subscribe, rate, and review the podcast wherever you listen. I'm looking forward to our next featured sweetness. We dig in to the book Dreams from My Father by Barack Obama. I hope this is enough time for you to get the memoir from the library, from your local bookstore. But if not, I'll be sure to also include a link for you to purchase the book if you'd like to follow along. I'd love to have you. Until then, with the most grateful heart, I'll see you soon, sweetness.